Today's speaker is George Markose, sir. He is the managing director at Alltrack Tracking Solutions Private Limited and Navigation Technologies India Private Limited. And he has extensive experience in GPS-based vehicle tracking solutions for defense, aviation, and finance sectors. Professional expertise: he has over 15 years of leadership experience in technology innovation and implementation. He has pioneered cutting-edge GPS tracking solution for high security environments, and he's an expert in real-time monitoring systems and IoT infrastructure development. Academic background: he holds advanced degrees in chemical engineering and business administration, combining technical knowledge with strategic management expertise. Industry contributions: regularly contributes to international technology conferences and has published several papers on GPS technology advancements and applications in emerging markets. Leadership philosophy: committed to fostering innovation through collaborative team environments and maintaining the highest standards of technical excellence and client satisfaction.
One of the things what I'd like to actually first do is, to tell you that I think one of the reasons that I am here today, and I've done everything from being, in spite of being a chemical engineer, I've been involved in aircraft maintenance and selling. I've been involved in GPS design, development, manufacture, that's totally electronics. I've been involved in IT-enabled services. I've been involved in electronics and a whole bunch of teaching. And I think one of the main things that I would like to, thank actually this college for is, that two things were. One was the rigor of the course in terms of the fact that this college made 75% attendance compulsory is one of the biggest things. And I've seen that when I'm teaching in a lot of these colleges right now where attendance is not compulsory, I've seen a direct linkage between the performance of students in the college vis-a-vis the attendance. And I think just the fact that teachers made sure that we were there for 75% of all the classes, that itself, in spite of whether we wanted to study, didn't study, we were focused or distracted on other things, but for some reason something went into our heads. That was one of the main things. The second thing I would like to say is this basic course. A lot of y'all, when y'all pass through the college or when you go through this course, you'll see things like we had like practicals like a lathe lab, and then there were a whole bunch of ENC subjects. There were E&E labs, E&E subjects, there were civil engineering subjects, there were mechanical subjects. And one of the things that a lot of people, try to understand is, what is the use of all that? But I think, one of the main things in terms of the fact that I've been able to go right from aircraft maintenance and selling, in spite of being a chemical engineer and designing my own device and making my own electronic hardware and developing an entire software solution around it, was purely because that every time, and just passing through MIT, all these fears that I had on different branches or different, like a mechanical engineering subject. Just with that one lathe lab or one or two subjects, that fear that I had of each of these subjects, I was able to overcome it because of this particular course. So that's two of the reasons that, I think I'm really grateful to Manipal. And a lot of students might not realize, why am I, being a computer engineer, why am I not getting into computer science, and why am I doing a mechanical course? And this is one of the reasons, because at the end of the day, whatever fear you have, it's all about breaking it down, and Manipal helps you do that. Now, what I'll do for you is, I'll right now talk about entrepreneurship and how I got into it. And I think a lot of people, they have these great stories in terms of, okay, I became an entrepreneur, my parents were entrepreneurs, or I heard this great story of Narayan Murthy. I heard this great story of Ratan Tata, and or some rags to riches story. And I just said, I have to, imbibe that. But the reason that I got into entrepreneurship was actually purely because of bullying. And bullying in the sense, so I did my father was an aircraft maintenance engineer. My mother was a secretary at HPCL. And they put me through, cathedral school. And at Cathedral, I was surrounded by a whole bunch of these entrepreneurs and, businessmen's kids. So I had Ruya, who owns Phoenix Mills. These were my classmates. I had Rohan Sippy, whose father just made Sholay. I had Tribhuvandas Bhimji Zaveri's granddaughter, and an Neswadia, whose father owned Bombay Dine. So these were my classmates, and every year we would be required to fill in this form where we had to say in terms of father's profession and mother's profession. Until the 6th or 7th standard, it didn't make much of a difference. But when I got to the 8th, I started getting conscious about the fact that, Arey Baba, here I am surrounded by all these people, and my parents are not big shots, or they're not senior management. So every time I used to write that form, I used to literally cover that that portion, cover the form, and go and hide and submit it, because I didn't want anyone to know that I'm not an industrialist kid. So went on for 3 years, and this thing, it kept hitting. It's not that it made a big difference, but it kept, that pressure was there in terms of, shucks, I have not been able to write direct, or I am not comparable. So on the last day of school, as I was standing, we were just about to leave the school, last day in the 10th standard. And I stood at that gate, and the first thing I told myself is, I'm going to have a son and daughter, and they're going to come back to Cathedral. They're going to join Cathedral. And when they write father's profession, they're going to write managing director. So that was a promise that I made. And then, of course, went to Wilson, went to Manipal, finished my chemical, got into Goa University, finished my MMS, and joined this company. Now, this company that I joined was a company called MITMAA Company Private Limited. And one thing about, I'll just share this screen with you. So at MITMAA, it was basically a 100 crore company, and they were into aircraft sales and maintenance. And I joined, one thing was, my father was an engineer. He was the aircraft maintenance engineer in this company. And the day I think he left on June 30th, and I joined on July 1st. And started as a management training. It was a 100 crore company. And while I was there, they got me into aircraft sales and maintenance, different parts of, so we are selling a 6-seater, 12-seater, 18-seater aircraft. And they got me into the maintenance part of it, in terms of, marketing, in terms of admin, in terms of procurement, in terms of pricing, in terms of submitting quotes. And there I found this one product called Garmin, which was a GPS, which they used for navigation. So this was, I think they were selling around 3 GPS at that time. And, there are a lot of import restrictions. So they were not selling too many, but it was around 3 GPS, and it was not the main focus. But I just saw the potential of this unit, and I saw that, at some point of time, everyone's going to use this requirement, use this device for navigating, for going from one place to another. And I said, can I take this and can I start, marketing it and selling it? And they said, okay, let's do that. So the first thing I did was picked up this Garmin and went to the, started, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know I thought Navy was on the sea, the Army would be on the land, and I don't know where to start. But spent a week in Delhi, going to every Army headquarters, Naval headquarters, Air Force headquarters, and trying to find someone who, was going to be interested in buying. And another reason was, in those days, you could not, there were a lot of import restrictions. So you could not sell GPS to the, to the civil population. So when I picked up this product, the first thing I did was went to the Navy. The Navy got in touch with us and said, Baba, there is this one particular product. There is this one contract that we'd signed with another company, but we are doing a loss of around 8 lakhs on that contract. So, there was a demonetization and, depreciation of the rupee. And what happened was, the Navy was, the guy who was supposed to supply to them, because it was a rupee contract, he'd left. And he said, you can take this order, but it's at a loss of 8 lakhs. And that's the only way you can make an inroad into the Navy. So I went back to my boss and I said, Baba, I've got my first order, but the sad part is we're going to be doing it at a loss of 8 lakhs. Is that okay? And in those days, quite a lot, but he said, okay, let's do that. And from there, got the Navy. Then after that, we got the Coast Guard, we got the Army, we started doing the Indian Air Force, we started doing Border Security Force, we started training people, the ITBP, Ministry of Home Affairs, Marine Commandos, the whole bunch, and literally the entire armed forces. Even during Kargil, and the way we supported the Indian Army, and basically our Garmin and that same device that we had, it basically it sold like, in terms of literally the entire armed forces standardized Garmin for all their navigation requirements. So this became, it was like picking up 3 GPS and then going to standardizing the device across the entire armed forces. One of the things was, the bosses were pretty happy, and So in 96, when I joined as a management trainee, 97, they made me a marketing manager. And by 99, I was elevated to the board of directors of the company. So by around 99, things were going good. I'd sold a whole bunch of stuff. And I mean, at the end of the day, one thing was being a director in the same company where my father was a, aircraft maintenance engineer. But so when it came to my 29th birthday, that is, I'm just about to become 30, this is February 27th. This one promise is, going on in the back of my mind that, I made this promise to myself that I'm going to start my business. So, and it kept bothering me. And it was 30. So I said, yeah, but I'd said I'll do it before I cross 30. So what I did was I said, okay, I mean, let me wait for another year. I'm not crossed 30 as yet. I'll wait till I'm going to become 31. Now a whole year went by, didn't do any groundwork, didn't do any spade work. And then finally, again, February 27th came. This was 2002 and I'm now going to be 31. So I'm in Taj Mansingh. I think you're doing some army deal or something. And I was sitting over there and this pressure has just built up over 2 days that I promised that I would start my business and I haven't started it as yet. And then at midnight, that's February 26th, 23:59, went down to the business center and faxed my resignation to the board of directors and said I'm quitting. And the first thing they thought is, they thought that I was drunk or I was high or, I was, taking drugs or something because, why would someone just quit suddenly? But I told them, so I went back to Bombay. I was in Delhi, came back to Bombay and I told them, Baba, this is the reason that I promised myself that I'm going to start a business before I cross 30. And I have to keep that promise to myself. So then, as crazy as it would sound, left the company and left the company and then started my own company. That was in April 2002, which was a company called Navigation Technologies. Now, one of the beautiful things that happened with Navigation Technologies was that when we started in 2002, again, by then the import restrictions had stopped, but I just knew that, we wanted to actually develop a fleet management or a vehicle tracking system. And when we were looking for clients, I went all around. I started the company in April and it was only by, I think, October or November that we got our first client, which was Jet Airways. And they said that we are looking for a vehicle tracking system. And basically we are looking for a device that will be able to track and prevent fuel pilferage and be able to track vehicle location, etc. So the first thing I did was, okay, now, we found partners who would actually develop these applications for us. And then we developed our own device. Now, the first device that we developed, I think the device was ready in something like literally in a month's time. But one of the challenges that we faced was when we started installing it on the client's vehicles, we started seeing a lot of problems in terms of, so we started the company and our first client was Jet, and we started seeing a lot of problems in terms of, the client, in terms of our first device was like a plastic box. So when we put it in a vehicle, it would start melting and it would start, it would fail. Then we had issues with GPS. Then we had issues with the drivers tampering with it. Then after that, I think it took us almost 2 years before we got our first device ready. After we developed that device, then we had the issue of OEMs and, in terms of trying to get the OEM approval. And then we overcame that and then we were able to, make, I think after that we did the OEM approvals and then we had our device and we got our first client, which was Jet Airways. And they installed our devices on all the vehicles. And after that, so here is the device that we actually made. It was an offline data logger. But finally, what we did is, got aluminum boxes, got a GPS and sat with vendors and sat with a whole bunch of the clients. And we got the OEM approvals. And then after that, there was no turning back after that. So we got more and more clients for the offline. Then we moved to online. Then we we started off in Mumbai. Then we went and, spread operations. Had operations in the metros. Then by 2013, we were in, I think, close to, 13 cities. And by 2018, we were in 18 cities and towns across India. And one of the things that I saw with, in this whole journey was in terms of, the various aspects of, in terms of, for example, when we pass out as students, I think one of the main limitations that we face is that a lot of our course and our curriculum does not prepare for us for, in terms of developing applications and in terms of strategic marketing, in terms of finding gaps in the market. And one of the reasons that, it took me, even though we had that device, I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced was in terms of being able to, actually, what do you say, in terms of getting customers to, not customers, but more in terms of getting the financing and getting the packaging and all that done. So one of the reasons that I want to do and what I want to share in today's class is basically in terms of how students should basically prepare themselves and what they should be prepared for, when they leave the course and before they get into business. Now, one of the main things that you'll see is, so this was the device. Okay, so today's discussion is basically in terms of before you leave the college and when you start the business, what are the challenges in managing growth and how to time your exit. Now, the first thing is before you leave college, so what are the skills that you need to develop? Now, one of the things that I've seen is when I've actually started teaching these BMS students is, and when I started going to their class, even when you see the course outline or when you see the course outcome, there are a lot of skill that they talk about having at the end of the course. You should have developed A, B, C, D, E, F, these particular skills. But when I look at the curriculum in terms of how they actually teach them, like for example, there are some colleges which are, the worst in terms of they give you guides, they give you Vipul publications, and they teach you a subject purely in terms of A, B, what are the differences, what are the items, what are the various parts of, which are the various strategies, and it's more like a theoretical class. And one of the things that I've seen is, even though there are a lot of colleges that encourage case studies, there is a lot of issue in terms of when it comes to, at the end of the day, when the child actually passes out, in terms of being able to develop a skill. And I've seen a lot of, examples in terms of, so I've taught students who are in the first year, I've taught students who are in the third year, in the second year. And I see that by the time they reach the third year, they've literally forgotten or they've lost the ability to think and to be able to strategize and to be able to understand as to what they've learned all those years. So one of the first things that I did was, when I started teaching is trying to get them, I literally got into this trap of, making presentations more in terms of, points, bullet points, and saying this is the thing, but giving an industrial experience. But at the end of the day, one of the main things that I realized was, what I changed about the whole thing was, in terms of getting into actually developing a skill. So now compared to, how I started, now what I actually teach kids is in terms of developing a skill, like for example, in terms of, making, let's say if you have strategic marketing, or if you're doing like last semester, I taught around social media marketing. And there what I made the kids do is pick up a course or pick up a cause, pick up a problem that they were facing in the industry, pick up a business that was not doing well and accept them, and then try and actually be able to market the solution or market the product or market the service. And one of the things that I saw that actually evolved is from this case study approach. When you have this approach where you're actually getting students who are going and actually seeing actual case studies, or actually working with clients, or actually working with businesses and helping them through their problems. So we had this team of girls who was looking at a course when part of the social media marketing. What they did was they adopted this course where they were looking at a whole bunch of women and the sexual abuse or the the groping and issues that they face, especially when in public transportation. So they picked up that course, they created a website, they created a Twitter account, they created a Facebook page, they created a social media page. And what they did was, in the end, what happened was they ended up getting a lot of calls, a lot of interest. And later, because of that practical experience, they then went on to design solutions for the college. Now, other things like, and I've seen this happening, when I look at Manipal, I see, in terms of great projects, but I think at the end of the day, what you'll also need to focus on is in terms of developing a particular skill. Now, what the various skills that you need to develop is, one is, for example, is to become like an entrepreneurial engineer. What I mean by that is, what I see with a lot of the students that I teach now, I'm teaching a course in, BSc AI, and it's basically data management and artificial intelligence. And I've designed a course where we have a module in terms of marketing, I have a module in terms of finance, I have a module for HR, and I have a module in terms of the production and the operations part of it. Now, one of the main things that I've tried to do with the course, and what I think that students should also do, is basically before you'll get out, before you'll pass out, I think you should get a better understanding of your business in terms of what our business is about, what is the interaction, how do businesses operate in terms of what are the finance, what is accounts, what is how do you manage people, how do you get into marketing, and then a lot of projects around feasibility studies and customer centric thinking and customer centric product development. And so before you start a business, one of the mistakes that I made was in terms of not being able to strategize, and not in terms of, for example, I had this great dream of starting the company, but at the end of the day, what I realized was after I started the company, I wasn't even prepared. So one of the things that I didn't do was I didn't have a product ready. I had to literally go to clients and actually develop products. The business that I chose was not even IPO worthy. IPO worthy in the sense, in terms of when you look at a particular business, what happens to you is, or what you go through is, in terms of you face situations. And for example, our business was more in terms of, we weren't developing any software, but we were actually getting it integrated. We were buying devices, and then we were putting our brand name on it, and then we were selling it to multiple clients. So one of the things that I realized, when you choose a business, it should be IPO worthy. Once you start, customer, money. So actually, what I'll do is, are there any questions that anyone wants to ask me? Ananya?
Does anyone have any questions they would like to share? No, sir. You can go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay.
Yes.
So basically, give me, because I'm actually new to online, so I'm literally blanking out. But let me just start. Okay. So one of the main things that you need to do before you start a business, and one of the mistakes that I made was, first of all, I did not have any skills in terms of understanding of business, understanding of finances, understanding of accounts, understanding of operations. I had done a lot of sales and marketing, and because of that, I thought business is as easy as just going out and selling. But at the end of the day, when you finally start your own business, you suddenly realize the challenges that will come your way. Now, one of the challenges that we generally tend to face are in terms of, you have made a product, and finally, when your product is not customer developed. Now, for example, let's say, I think a lot of engineering college students have the same situation where when you design a product in your mind, one of the first things you do is you make a product based on your own specifications and your own understanding of what the customer would like in a product, without actually interacting with customers. So even when I made my GPS device, one of the first things was, okay, I need a GPS device which will track vehicle position. And finally, when you get down to actually going and marketing it to a customer, if you haven't involved the customer along the entire process, what will happen is you will find this mismatch between what the customer expects in terms of pricing, in terms of features, in terms of the technical specifications, and what is your product delivering at the end of the day. Now, one advantage and one of the good things that I did when I started my business was, when we made this device, I just knew that I wanted to do something like a vehicle tracking device. And without a unit, without a device, I just started looking for clients. We got our first client. And literally with those first 5 pilot vehicles, it took me 2 years. But in those 2 years, sitting with that client, I developed an entire unit. So when you're developing a technology or when you're developing a solution, the first thing that I did was, okay, so when we had this client who, started working with us, things like the device, things like tampering, things like brownout, things like electronic failure, things like working under high temperature, things like OEM approvals, things like aesthetics, things like installing a device in a car. So one of the advantages that we had, and one of the good things that I did, was actually working with a client in terms of being able to develop a unit. Now, the mistake that I made when I started business was not enough groundwork. Okay, you had this dream that you had to be a director, you left a good job, but leaving the job or starting an entrepreneurial journey is okay. But the biggest challenge was, and the biggest problem that I faced was that there was no preparation for it. And a lot of people, a lot of companies that tend to fail is because there is no preparation or there's no prior groundwork done. Now, when you're looking at strategy, for example, when I chose this device, the first thing I should have done, and ideally should have done, was, okay, you develop the unit with the customer, but the next thing I should have done was understand competition, understand pricing, understand in terms of what is the price that I'll get, what is the kind of service, in terms of what is the long-term strategy, what are the long-term prospects of this device. Now, when I made this device, another challenge that I faced was that when we made the device, it was capital intensive. That means, for example, a huge amount of cost. Okay, now a part of that cost I offset by working with vendors. But another challenge that I faced was in terms of when we got this device, a lot of clients didn't trust me in terms of, okay, you're a new startup. What is the guarantee that you will be there for the next 5 years or 10 years? And what they all said is, no one's going to buy. My intention of, when I made the device was to actually go ahead, make the device and then sell it. And then, you're basically just funding your working capital requirements. But what I ended up seeing was when we started going out and when we started meeting clients, no one was willing to buy the solution and everyone wanted it as a service. So which meant that I would be buying the device and then giving them on a client on a service basis, like on a rental. Plus I'd be giving them a website, giving them the analysis of data, asking them to, giving them reports. But in the end, what happened was, it was me putting up the money and then recovering it over a period of time. Now, when you accept that strategy, one thing was, okay, we started growing. Literally, there was a time when almost every car rental, or any transport service provider in the passenger segment, they were all using our device. We were in all the metros at that time. But the biggest challenge I faced is when I started looking for funding, one of the biggest challenges I faced was in terms of everyone told me that this is the model that you've chosen might be good in terms of a business, but there are very few companies or there are very few financiers or there are very few people who would actually fund this. So we went to ICICI Venture. The first time I went to ICICI Venture, they told me that, okay, you're starting in one city, but try and show us scale. Try and show us 4 cities or 5 cities. 2 years later, when we were in 5 cities, I went back to ICICI Venture and they told me, this problem is not in terms of what you all are doing. You might be making a great profit. But at the end of the day, when you're finally looking at financing it or we are looking at funding it, what we need to do is, if for us to grow, let's say if I have to become, or let's say if you as a company needs to become a 1 crore to 100 crore company, you need to keep putting money into devices, which means what happens over a period of time is, to grow, you'll need to keep putting more and more money. And ideally, what a venture capital will do is, they'll put a lump sum of money, like a 100 crore project, and they would expect it to be a one-time requirement, and after that, the company should be able to grow on its own. So one of the first things you need to do before you start your business is, if you have decided that I want to go on the IPO route, or if you have decided that I want to go into this business and I want to, get funding and I want to get investors to fund into, my company, the main thing is to choose in terms of what is the business and what is the model and whether that model will meet that requirement. So, for example, I've seen a lot of people making this mistake where they try to get into trading and, buying and selling, and, you ask them what their dream is, and the first thing they'll say is, I want to get into an IPO, I want to get funding. But at the end of the day, if there is something that is not unique, or there's something that you don't hold an IPR to, or there is something that you are not manufacturing, or if there's something that is not going to give them, 100x returns, they will not put, or you will find it difficult to get someone who will fund it for you. So the first thing is, before you choose a company, is to decide in terms of which business. Now, it's not that all business cannot reach an IPO stage. For example, if you look at Theobroma is basically 2 sisters who took 1.5 crores from their dad, bought a shop and set up a bakery. And today, after, I think they started in just around 1990, 1996. And I think a few months ago they've sold it for around 1,000. I mean, their share was 1,800, but the company was valued at around 3,100 crores. So one of the main things is to understand, okay, if I'm doing this business and if this is my objective, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 3 years, or 10 years down the line, what is the strategy I need to adopt? And is it IPO worthy? Now, once you start, every time, you start a business, one of the main things that have been good and bad for me has been my focus on customer and money. Now, when I say customer and money, first is customer in the sense, every product, every service, every company, if you wanted to succeed, the main thing that I've always done is build it around a customer. So my finance, my accounts, my payment terms, my production, my customer service, my marketing, my sales, my developing a product, my even right to my employee going and delivering a package, or delivering, or someone going and installing devices on a client's vehicle, everything would all be focused around what the customer requires. And a customer, I'll tell you, so the good things have been in terms of when COVID happened, spoke to my customers and they were the first to tell me that, Baba, if you're looking at it, this is not going to, work in terms of they are going to shut down. And, they were the first ones who actually gave me advice in terms of it's time to close the business and then restart it once COVID goes. Customers will tell you in terms of when competitors are coming. Customers will tell you in terms of new technologies. Customers will tell you in terms of pricing. Customers will tell you in terms of whether your service is good or bad. And the moment you start your business and you build it around the customer, that is one of the best ways to actually, that's one of the most important pillars for your success. The second thing that I've realized, and one thing that there were two parts of it, which is money. And money is basically, one is in terms of the importance of money, and the second is the cost aspect of money. Now, when you look at the importance of money, one of the biggest things that I did when I started my business was, the main focus was that I'm going to be a director, or that I'm going to have this large company, or that I'm going to leave a legacy for my kids, or I'm going to, be in so many cities, or I'm going to be scaling up to I'm going to be having this name tag. And one of the biggest problems that you'll face at that point of time, you get too emotionally attached. So whenever your company is doing badly, when the business is not doing well, when you've not met your milestones, when you've not met your targets, one of the biggest challenges that you will face is you might end up, losing track of the fact that you're not making money, but you're still holding on to something that you don't need to. So one of the first things that everyone does once you start your business is to focus. One is on the customer, what his requirements are, build your entire company around the customer. And the second is to focus on in terms of, are you making money or not? Are you profitable or not? Are you generating, is your cash flow positive? Are you generating enough funds? And these are the areas that you need to start looking at. The next aspect is cost. Now, when you're looking at cost, so the first part in terms of when you're talking about everything is about money. If you ever see, for example, the moment you don't have an emotional attachment and you start, like if you look at Reliance, when they have a business, let's say they started a business and they're running into losses, they're like, for example, when you look at Jio, now when Jio started their business, they knew that, they're going to have to grab market share. But over a period of 10 years, they will slowly capture market share. They will get rid of all the competitors and they'll be the number one service provider. If they've got into business like GPS and tracking, the moment I think within 2 years, they placed an order for literally 1 lakh units. They had it on a lot of trucks, but the moment they found that it was not making money, without any hesitation, they shut it down. So one thing you can learn from them is the moment you're not making money, you should, when money is the focus and not the other things like the emotional attachment, it becomes very easy for you to take a decision like shutting down, moving on to something else, looking at another business, closing the business, getting into another area, diversifying into another product, whatever. The next thing that has helped me and made me successful is the fact that cost. Now I compete with Reliance, I compete with Airtel, and I compete with some of the big companies in the country. And one of the main things that has always helped me is every morning when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I look at is cost. I look at how can I reduce costs? And it would be even something as small as a process. Like for example, the first is vendor, speaking with the vendor and seeing how you can reduce costs. Looking at your device and realizing, maybe I don't need these 2 LEDs. Maybe I don't need, this chipset. Maybe I can combine a chipset and buy a cheaper chipset. Maybe I can, move my manufacturing. Like earlier, my manufacturing was based out of Pune. Then we moved it to China. Then we moved it to Taiwan. So what is the best way in terms of reducing the cost in terms of the manufacturing part of it. The next is in terms of every day, like it would be the number of people. So there was a time that I had 30 people working for me, using automation, using server to server in terms of all the softwares that we developed and the applications that we did. I was able to reduce 30 people to just one person in terms of analyzing data. So there was a time I had 30 people in an office who would be sitting and manually analyzing data. Over a period of time, we worked out in terms of finding out which are the parts that you can automate, automated it, and I was reduced to just one person analyzing, not even analyzing data, because 5:30 in the morning, our server would analyze the data and send it to the clients. And within 5:31, all the clients had their data, they had their reports, and I just had one person to see whether reports have reached or not and send a mail and say, are you satisfied? That's it. So these are in terms of when you're looking at the cost. Other things were in terms of cutting down people, in terms of negotiating better prices, in terms of things like bank rates, in terms of stores, in terms of finding better sources of better vendors. So these are the various things. Now, once you start to grow, the next challenge that you'll face, and a lot of companies face, and I've seen a lot of my clients got funding. A lot of my clients started in one city, and by the time they went to 4 cities and 10 cities and 12 cities, one of the main challenges they faced is they all had to, literally they had a problem in terms of, scaling up of operations. So when you scale, if you don't manage scale well, scaling could be many things. Like, for example, when I had my device, now I was selling, in spite of being in Mumbai, rather than having offices in every city, I decided the best way to keep costs and quality high and cost low is to basically have my entire business focused, my entire operations based out of Mumbai, with like physical support in terms of engineers and electricians who come and install and troubleshoot at the city level. And one of the things that I was able to do with that was in terms of, so as we started growing, as we went from 1 city to 4 city to 13 cities and 13 to 18 cities, one of the challenges we faced was most of our electricians are basically from, they're from the street, they're street smart. They don't understand, they can't read a computer, they can't, if you ask them to install a device, whether it's a Porsche or whether it's a Lamborghini or whether it's a BMW, it's a Mercedes C-Class, one of the things that they will all do is, they'll cut wires, they'll strip wires, and there is no, at the end of the day, if you cut a Mercedes wire, you're going to spend, the warranty gets expired, the client will sit on our head. So one of the first things that we had to do was across the board, when in this part of growing up, was to ensure that the quality of the service is basically uniform across the board. So whether you're in Delhi, whether you're in China, and how we started, we didn't have WhatsApp in those days, but what we did was, what we started off was with, in terms of, sending them manuals. So for example, if you're installing it on a Scorpio, this is the manual. If you're installing it on a Nissan, this is the manual. If you're installing it on a Maruti, this is the manual. And after WhatsApp came, it became far more easier. Video calls and telling them do this and do that and, install it here. And a lot of companies, they tend to fail, in terms of the fact that they're unable to manage scale. And last is in terms of the, in terms of deciding as to when the time is to exit. So now, Ananya was talking about the fact that, okay, managing director of all track and navigation. Now, just after COVID, one of the things that I did was spoke to my clients. We realized that, when we looked at in terms of, I'd already gone through the Lehman crisis, and I knew that, one guy catching a cold and falling sick and spreading it to thousands of people across the world is not going to be a small event. So by February, I'd spoken to clients and we literally shut down the company. That means I'd switched off all the GPS, switched off the server. And I told employees that, we'll see how this pans out. And maybe after 2 months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, we'll come back. And luckily for us, lockdown happened. But lockdown happened in the sense, luckily we were prepared when lockdown happened. So when lockdown happened, we had zero cost, zero debt, no clients. And at the end of the day, there were a lot of companies who continued to do business and they managed to, they ended up, incurring huge losses. Now, since then, I got into crypto, got into a lot of things. And one of the things that I've always been looking for is another business. So, and also trying to avoid the mistakes that I made in the past. But now I've not launched the product as yet, but right now we're doing the analysis in terms of what the competitors' offerings are, what are the pricing, what are the gaps in the market. And I think within 2 or 3 months is, when we are trying to get into that particular product. One is a technology related product and one is a food related product. So let's see how that happens. Yeah. Any questions, Ananya? First of all, guys, I must apologize because I've never taken online classes, and I don't think, I think it's a bit. I've been teaching for 1.5 years. I don't have this problem in terms of, having a flowing thought process. But in case, please forgive me, if any of you all found any fault in the presentation. Yeah, and any questions?
Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? Please feel free to not be shy. Please feel free to ask questions. Like we are hoping to make it more interactive so that we have more entrepreneurs from MIT Manipal. So please feel free.
George, as of this time, I think it's fine. You go through this, and then at the end, if we come across something, we'll definitely ask. But the best part is you said being customer focused and modeling your product against the requirements, not according to your whims and fancies. That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah. I think actually I wanted to talk a lot about that point because one of the things that has made us successful, and just about in everything, whether it was my earliest stint with the Garmin GPS or later when I developed my own product, one of the things that helped me survive and even helped me take on competition like Reliance or any of the big companies. And in those days when I was with Garmin, I was competing with Bharat Electronics. I was competing with a whole bunch of these, defense companies who are trying to, at the end of the day, it wasn't an easy task in terms of, you're limited by the amount of funds that you have, and you still have to compete against these big companies. But the one thing that actually made us succeed in all was keeping the customer close to us. And every product, so whether it was, me putting an LED or removing an LED, creating a device or me adding a feature or removing a feature, it was all based right from product, right from finance, right from billing. So if a client came to me and said that, the charges are too high or the cost is too high, or there would be clients who would say, like, for example, when you're looking at this particular device, at the back, I made this unit in such a way that we could scale up to 10,000 devices, literally, without having to change the design at all. Or we can do even 10 or 50 devices or 100 devices, and still it wouldn't affect the design in any way. And one of the main things that we did is, during vehicle tracking, some of the things that we've done is integrated with, biometrics, integrated with an RFID reader, integrated with, a keyboard. In fact, we were also shortlisted as L1 for a BFMS, where the same device, they wanted to actually integrate a thermal imager, they wanted to a helmet mounted camera, alphanumeric keypad. So when we've decided and when we've designed the entire system, it's always been around what the customer requirement will be now, what will customer requirement be in future, and also trying to say that whenever a customer requirement comes, whether it's something like an integration or basic stuff, it should not affect the thing in terms of price. Even when a customer comes to me and says your price is too high, I generally don't say no to him in the first thing, or I don't say, get lost. This is the price that we are offering. But what we really do is we go back to the drawing board and see in terms of what are the various components. So first thing I'll go to my vendor and say, Baba, these are the various components. Can we reduce the price? Because I don't want to lose the customer. Then I'll start looking at our processes. In terms of that entire process from a manual to automation was purely driven by keeping the cost low, in the face of competition from Reliance, etc. So whenever you make a product, and last time, I think when we came for the 25 years, that reunion, one thing I saw over there was they made some great products. They made a bike and they made, and they had exhibited it. But at the end of the day, when you develop that product around a customer, then having to create a product, go into an exhibition and then try to sell it, you won't have that problem. If you found a customer first, and it's not that necessarily you have to make a bike, no one expects you to do that. But if you can make some problem that they are facing, like you go to Honda and you say, what are the problems that you're facing in the company? And they say that we are facing a problem with this particular process, or we are facing a particular with this instrument or this design. And then you go back to the board, work with them and then design it. First of all, you would have developed a customer-centric skill, and you would have, when you finally pass out, you'll realize more than just making a product, because this product I made, the first version of it was made in a month's time. But finally, when I had to get a customer approval and get the OEM to approve it, it took me literally 2 years to do that. So that is the main thing that I want to say is when you're doing projects at Manipal, you need to focus in terms of the customer centric needs to be more, and then it becomes far more easier. You get better recognition and your I mean, this problem in terms of funding, etc., will not be there.
Thank you, sir. So I have a question from Adit. So
Yeah.
he's asking, how do you reach out to your clients generally? Do you use your contacts and just ask them to refer you to interested people, or are there any platforms general people may not know about?
So when we used to do marketing earlier, it was generally word of mouth. Okay, word of mouth in the sense, the way I literally grew was, we went to one customer, we gave him great service, and he had employees that went into other companies. They took us to other companies, and most of us was just by growing in terms of pure service. But subsequently, in terms of when I got into the defense also, no one had any defense database. I didn't know, my parents are not from a service background. I didn't know anyone in the Army, Navy or Air Force. But simple cold calling in terms of calling one person. And I'll tell you this, another problem I think, not a problem, but I think I keep seeing is in terms of placements. And my wife was in charge of placements at Xavier's. And no contacts. So what they would do is, there was a time when, some 5 or 6 companies would come. I'm talking about almost 14 years ago, when 5 or 6 companies would come and, the pay scale was nothing. The pay package was nothing. And what she did was form a team of students, and all they did throughout the year, for the first year, was just cold calling. So they'll find their uncle, they'll find their father, they'll find some sort of a contact. They'll try and get them to do like a meet. They'll try and do like a seminar. And over a period of time, people started, 1 person got hired, 3 people got hired. And now I think their package is almost, Bain comes in, Citibank comes in, and their package is almost around 30-35 lakhs. So same thing, the same process that runs extensive and aggressive cold calling. So for example, I'll call a client, he says, call me next week, I'll call him up again. Call him next week, call him up again. When you combine that with a good quality service and a good quality product, and you have a good customer referral, and every time you speak to a customer, whether it's an army guy, whether it's a car rental guy, whether it's a bank guy, if he's happy and he's got a quality product or a service from you, whenever he meets another one or meets a colleague and or someone from another company or another client, and he says that we are looking for someone, if your service is good, they will automatically refer you. So one of the main things is, I've never had contacts as such, but now I think social media has made it far more easier to get in touch with clients. But in the earlier days, go there, and every time I'm in a city, I'll spend 3 days just looking for people, cold calling, fixing meetings, and then interacting with them or use referrals. But I never had this contacts database per se. So one of the things is aggressive to get databases. For example, in placements, they find your dream companies. You have a whole bunch of students, you have a bunch of alumni. Pick up our database and start, getting us to, the few people who are hiring, get us to come down and actually hire people. And and another thing I was telling Atul, I think when he told me sometime back when we were facing a problem with placements, what I told Atul is, what you all should typically do is, if companies are not coming there, if people are not hiring, what you need to do is go to those companies and ask them, what is the reason that you're not doing? Is it that you feel that there is a skill gap, or do you feel that students are going to join and then they're going to leave the organization? Or is it that, that you're facing a recession, or you feel the salaries that are being demanded are too high? But the main thing is to get in touch with your customer and try and find out as to where the challenges are, where the problems are.
So I have a question from my personal experience. So did you, throughout your journey, what was initially, what was your percentage of customer negative feedback versus positive feedback? Did you ever feel some customer was not happy with your service?
Okay, so I think 2007-8 was when the Lehman crisis happened. Before 2007-8, we were growing at almost 150%. In terms of sales every year on year. And during that particular phase, what happened was, the success went into our head, and we forgot, or I forgot as an entrepreneur, in terms of what were the reasons for making me so successful. And literally, we were just sitting, having to do nothing, and I would have clients calling me and saying, we want your solution. Now, along the way, I started getting these small bits of complaints from here and there. This is not working, that is not working, that report didn't come in, that car is not working, this had, and in this success, and I'm trying to say that, Arey Baba, it's gone into your head that, they need me and I don't need them. And during that phase, I think I ignored a whole bunch of clients. Now, clients didn't have a choice. But when the Lehman crisis happened, what was the first thing that they did was, there was this huge liquidity crunch. I don't know whether you all lived through it or you all have read about it. But there was a liquidity crunch and companies were literally cutting down on their costs and their budgets. And they were trying to find out which are the unnecessary expenses. And in a single year, because of the fact that I'd ignored these whole bunch of clients, I lost literally, my sales dropped by 75%. Every client gave me a 1-month termination notice. I lost clients like Capgemini. I lost clients in the car rental business. And they just, 1-month notice and saying, we don't need your service because we're not satisfied with your service. So that was like a wake-up call for me. And I still remember, I was wondering, what are the problems? It didn't strike me like what the problems are. So one day I just sat, took an A4 size paper and I said, let me write down all the problems I feel that are there with the company. Imagine your sales is dropped by 75. Clients don't need your service anymore. And when I started writing in terms of problems, it turned out to be like a 14-page A4 size, minimum font kind of problems. And then what I did was started picking up one by one, the easy ones, clearing them, meeting clients, apologizing. If there were issues with software, if there were issues with server, if there were issues with server downtime, if there were issues with a person not going there on time, if it was an issue with payment terms, if it was an issue with pricing, if it was an issue with billing, solve them one by one. And then by the end of 2008, we had again got all our clients back again. So I have gone through this learning experience where, so I said, when you forget your customer and forget that he's the one who's responsible for who you were, there is a tendency for you to, lose track and lose your customers. So I've gone through that phase as well. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Great answer. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay. You are muted, I think, Sandeep Kumar. Yeah, go ahead, Sandeep, sir.
Myself, Sandeep Kumar, 96.
Hello, sir.
And 96 to 2000 batch. So right now I'm working as a Reliance Industries new NEI, new energy integrated. So I'm the civil background. So any help from me? So I done the 25 years old working as experience, and any help from me? Can you contact the
Absolutely. So right now I'll tell you what we are doing is, I'm telling you. So earlier what I used to do was we had this vehicle tracking solution which post-COVID I got out of, and I was always looking for a product. Now I found a technology related product. Because it's in that stage where we're trying to still analyze it. It's a very good product, and one is a food product. And both these products are, I'm learning from my past mistakes. They are low capital intensive. They are one is in a growth stage, or it's just people are getting aware of the product. But one of the reasons that we are trying to do is, I think another 3 to 4 months time is when we are looking at. For food, I think it's going to be maybe your skill set is too advanced for that. But in the other aspect, in terms of the technology related product, if there ever is a requirement, sir, we'll definitely, I'll put a post up to, the first thing I'll do is come to Manipal and start looking for people who have passed out of Manipal. That's understood, sir. That's taken. Right now we're not hiring, but if there ever is a requirement, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And then Siddharth has a question. He's saying that it's a great session, and he's asking.
I don't think so.
No, it is definitely great. And
I'm telling you, it didn't turn out the way that I wanted, because actually I'm not used to an online class. But I think, and I've done this after a long time. So it's like this coordination in terms of, I teach offline pretty well. But I'm really, I'm pretty disappointed that it didn't turn out as well as I'd expected. But I hope, you can learn something from that and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's great. So he's asking, how do you see AI disrupting your business in the next 2 to 5 years, and how do you plan to face this?
Actually, for an entrepreneur, AI is a dream come true. It's a boon for me. It's something that I'm really looking forward to as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. In fact, I'll tell you, when I was having my business and I had these 30 employees, and managing those 30 employees used to be a headache. And, I read this somewhere where someone said that, his dream company is where he comes in the morning, he switches on the enter button, he starts the machine does everything at the end of the day, and he can go to sleep, and in the night he has to just go and switch off the machine. And for me, AI is that that option available. So for example, right now when I'm looking at this new business, in the olden days, and when I'm saying olden, it means like just prior to 2015, right? For me to get information, for me to get competitive intelligence, for me to get analysis of the market, for me to understand trends, for me to understand product, and for me to understand manufacturing process, I had to physically go, or I had to call up some 10,000 people, or I had to slimily, in the olden days, we had to literally, if you wanted to find a competitor's price, I had to literally find out, I'm a client and can you tell me the price? But with AI and with all the tools that are available right now, it's phenomenal. For me to get information, for me to start a business, for me to run a business, for me to grow it, for me to, incorporate AI, it's like a dream come true. So at the end of the day, my advice to all people is, and anyone who's looking at a job as an employee, whether you're senior management, whether you're running the entire company, you're the CEO, CFO, you could be anyone. But if you're an employee, and as AI is approaching, all your jobs at some point of time is going to be replaced. It can be 1 year, it can be 2 years, it can be 5 years, it can be even 10 years, but it'll be replaced. And the best thing to do is to try and get these skills in terms of starting your own business. Because if you have AI and you're starting your business, again, when you're saying starting your business, there are certain products and certain services which AI will, like for example, if you're starting a business as a lawyer, lawyers are not going to be required. If you're starting a business as a consultant or a wealth consultant, AI is not going to be required. But if you're investing in the stock market yourself, for example, one of the main things that I've enjoyed with Grok is telling me, prediction of price, what are the levels, what are the pivot levels, what are the high, what are the lows, what is the range, what is the effect of the news. To get that tool on my hand, if you are investing money yourself, great. But if you're trying to be a consultant to someone, bad. So one thing is, everyone should start looking, and there are a lot of products. Now there might be food. Why I've got into food and why I've got into this other electronic item is, first of all, when I got into trading, that was to, COVID proof it. Then I got into teaching, which was to COVID proof it again, but it's not AI proof. And now I've got into business, and getting into food is because food is something that cannot be, made redundant by AI. So main thing is pick up a product, pick up a business, pick up a particular solution, pick up a particular service where AI cannot replace you, and then use AI as a tool. As an entrepreneur, as a businessman, AI is a dream come true. As an employee, AI is a nightmare. And all the students that I'm teaching right now, I've given them, for example, I teach integrated business management to a whole bunch of AI students. And it started off with this concept of, because they're getting into AI, to try and tell them in terms of, okay, these are the various aspects you need to look at, get an understanding of business as such. But it's now got into me telling them, start getting your products, start choosing services. So they form groups, they've chosen multiple products. And what they're doing is they're doing market research, they are designing an entire production process, they're designing inventory management, they're designing personal management, they're designing HR systems, they're designing basic level of finance, that is your profit and loss, like an Excel sheet, budgeting. And so that at some point of time, because I know 3 years, they're in the first year, and 3 years when they pass out, AI might have not even given them jobs anymore because a machine is doing it on its own. So the whole thing is, try and look at yourself to survive in the future, is to try and look at how AI can help you in your, as a businessman, AI is a dream come true. It's not a threat. It's actually what every entrepreneur is looking, where you don't need to depend on an employee and you can just depend on a machine.
Great answer. All right. Does anyone have any more questions?
So someone's written, I think someone wanted to reach out. So you've got my email address, Ananya. I'll share it with you on WhatsApp, and anyone wants to do that, they can do that. Ideally, it's gmtharagan@gmail.com, but you can send it to me on that, or share. Don't share the WhatsApp number, but I'll send you an email address, and you can ask them to do that.
Yeah, that would be great. If you could share me your email, I can
I'll send it to you on WhatsApp.
Sure, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Great. I think no one has any more questions here.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ananya. We
thank you,
could
sir,
have
for
been better, but I mean, I think this me getting accustomed to a screen like this, it's going to take maybe another class or two, and then I'll be okay with it. I haven't done this in a long time. I think I did this 4 years ago, so it was a little challenging for me, but other than that, okay.
yeah.
Kanti ma'am, I'm sorry. I hope it was okay. I mean, it's not how
Yeah,
I
it
would
was
have
good.
liked the class to be. Yeah, but I would have liked it to be better. I mean, I have a better flow.
Yeah,
This was like,
that
I mean, pretty. In fact, when Ananya had approached
definitely.
me, I said, when Ananya had approached me earlier and said, do this online, the first thing I told her was, Ananya, I'm bad with online. I mean, I would rather fly down to Manipal and have a session with you all where I can interact with a face and ask
Yes.
questions. I'm generally more interactive. So, but I still hope that, someone was able to learn something from this. So,
No, definitely. I'm thinking of that. I think we will arrange some physical session here for the students. It'll be
okay.
good
Yeah,
for
that'll be fine.
there are many more entrepreneurs, and we have innovation and incubation center at
Okay.
MIT. Only I
Yeah,
think we can have that. I have
absolutely.
one question. Like, see, being a
Yeah.
chemical engineer, what made you to
Yeah.
decide on a particular solution? Because how do you choose that which one can be uh, product to start with?
Okay, so ma'am, actually, when I did chemical engineering, I mean, it was not out of choice. It was my mother said she was in HPCL, right? So she said, I will get you a job in HPCL. Finally, when I passed out, HPCL said, we take only IIT and IIM. You have no choice. So then I was like, first of all, I didn't like chemical engineering right through. Okay. And when I first came into chemical, I think my marks were less. I was trying for mechanical. They said, your marks are low. We can give you chemical, take it or leave it. So I said, I'll take chemical. Next year, they said, you want to do mech? But then I said, maybe, this HPCL seems to be a good thing. But when I passed out, so chemical wasn't out of choice. But one thing is, as I've looked at every product, I mean, my main interest, I mean, I think one thing I got from chemical was in that last semester, they taught us marketing management. And when I looked at marketing management, I said, this is that seventh semester when they gave us that Kotler, and they said there was a subject that we had. I just realized that this is what I want to do. I mean, this is my dream. This is what I'm going to do, marketing. And then, I mean, by chance, okay, I mean, at any point of time, I was always comfortable with technology. I mean, partly because of Manipal, because we had multiple facets. But when I finally joined this company, I wasn't looking for something in my own field. I was looking for something that would be comfortable in terms of marketing, in terms of which I understood and where there was a need for it. Now, one of the challenges that I have faced is that being a chemical engineer and getting into aircraft sales is easy because, as long as you know how the aircraft flies, everything is okay. But the biggest challenge I have faced is in terms of when I've tried to design my own electronic device or, get into software development, I am too dependent on multiple people. So I'm dependent on an outside vendor. I'm dependent on software developers. I'm dependent on a team. I'm dependent on employees. I do not have that strength. I do not possess that strength where if someone goes, I can say get lost and, I can get onto a computer and do it on my own. So that has been a big challenge for me. But this product was so good. I mean, the service and at the end of the day, every customer that I meet to, they are more not interested in terms of the product. They're more interested in terms of how genuine you are, and in terms of the quality of service you give, the person, the human being you are. And that was good. But now the new product that I've chosen, I made sure of two things. One is I understand through. So food, the beauty about food is, I mean, I don't need to know either electronics or chemical or mechanical. It's purely in terms of it's easy to understand. The other product that I've chosen is electronic item, but I've chosen it in such a way that does not require any kind of development, any kind of software. It is a whole single unit which someone would have developed. I don't need to give product support at a component level, or I'm not manufacturing it on my own. I'm literally taking a product, white label product, putting my brand name on it and selling it under my brand name. So from that, yeah, if you're a chemical engineer and you try to do it, or you're a mechanical engineer with no experience in computer science, doing a business can be it's like you already climbing a steep hill, but you're literally doing a vertical climb if you don't have, basic understanding of what you're trying to do. So I've always been dependent, but I mean, there are ways to work around it. So one thing with a vendor is, I mean, I can't be too dependent on a vendor. So if I have one vendor, I'll make sure I have a backup. Or if I have one employee, I have a backup. Or if I have a service provider, I'll have a backup, so that I have overcome, whatever limitation I had in the fact that I didn't know computer, by having multiple sources that I could fall back on. More expensive, but peace of mind.
Great.
Yeah.
So nice to know about
it's challenging.
Learning experience, and it's a really great.
Yeah, very challenging. I mean, it's been in terms of, and my biggest challenge was I was a first generation entrepreneur. It's not that I started my business with around 50,000 rupees, and my father gave me that 50,000. I mean, so I had 2 children. This madness, waking up one day and saying, I've crossed 30, let me start my business. In hindsight, I'm happy. But in those first 2 years or 3 years when I was, there's a whole thesis I can write in terms of the mistakes that I made. For example, when I started this company, I thought, I'm going to be visited by generals and managing directors. So I took up, Harshad Mehta, the big bull. I took up his office space opposite the stock exchange. I was bleeding money just in office rent. Not a single client walked in. So if you ask me, what are the mistakes you made? Like, it'll be like sessions and sessions of mistakes, how I've overcome them, how I've corrected them, how I've turned around. But yeah, God's grace and good set of friends. And one thing is, I've got they're not here, but I've got a whole bunch of Manipal friends that I had, like a core group and of course batchmates, but this core group of 17 friends who during COVID, literally every week we did a Zoom call and we interacted with each other. And for some reason, if you have a foundation like that, they helped me get into crypto. They got me into the stock market. We keep advising each other. So it's been blessed with friends, good family support system, and good college. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Sorry, I wish it was better, but thank you again. Thank you.
No, it is good. Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.